Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5-Watt World. We're interested in helping you get the most music from the least gear. Not surprising from the channel tagline, the most music from the least gear. I'm fascinated by how much music you can make with a small pedal board, and it seems I'm not alone. Every time I turn around, someone is posting a thread about a mini pedal board that does enough. At the same time, doing the short history videos have confirmed for me that there are those that listen and those that don't, and this has always been true. I want to give my business to folks that listen to players and respond with products that come from that interaction. I realize that I want to do business with people that I admire and respect. And since I love a good story, I thought it would be cool to combine these two interests. Choose a company that I've found that's known for pedals and service, then put together a short board of their pedals, take a month to get to know the pedals, learn how they speak to me, write some music with them, and record it for the video. Then get to know the folks at the company better. Find out a little bit about who they are and how they got to where they are in the music business. So if you're a fan of boutique overdrives and things on the dumbly side of life, stay tuned, because this is the 5-Watt World shortboard short story of Jetter Gear. If you enjoy our videos, take a minute to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when we put out new videos. And if you've already subscribed, swing by the store and grab a t-shirt or a mug to support what we're doing here. There's a link in the description. So looking ahead to making a string of these videos, I wanted to make sure that I had a great baseline rig. I'm also going to do a series this year called Just One Amp, where I find and highlight an amp that can do what I think of as the current trinity for an all-arounder. The low wattage thing at home, gigging, and recording. One of the most interesting offerings in this category is the Rev Amps D, and the guys at Rev kindly sent me one to use. It can run at 4 watts for at home, or 20 watts for at the gig, basically Fender Deluxe wattage. And as that sage of rig rundowns, John Bollinger, told us.
Yeah, and it's pretty rare to be playing with a band that a deluxe won't cut. You know?
Right, yeah. I mean,
like if you're loud enough where a deluxe isn't going to cut, then you're really loud.
Yeah, you're going to be pretty loud.
Add to this real tube amp that it is also one of the first amps to include speaker impulse responses, IRs for short, for direct recording, and an internal load box for silent recording. Rev partnered with 2Notes for this. There is also a great computer interface that lets you do all kinds of in-the-box manipulations of that signal. You can add reverb, change microphones and/or mic placement. You can even switch off the tube power section and use a modeled power section from the software for a whole other sound. The D20 has all of this wrapped up in a crazy light little lunchbox head weighing in at under 9 pounds. But beyond all the cool IR facility, there's still the interaction of the guitar with a speaker in the room. This is where a lot of the magic still happens. For that, we needed a great speaker cab. I wanted to choose one that fits well with the 5-Watt World ethos well, of course. After years of gigging and travel, I'm kind of obsessed with what I think of as the T to W, tone to weight ratio. Mojo Tone is making a light speaker cab now, about the size of a Princeton cab, solid 3/4-inch pine construction for resonance and lightweight. Loaded with a Celestion Neo Creamback speaker, the cab weighs in at just 17 pounds, 4 ounces. With a little rev on top, it just kind of begs for the sacrilege of standing it up on its end, yielding a stage-friendly footprint of just 10 by 16 inches. After breaking in the Neo, I'm really loving the classic Celestion tones and the crazy lightweight cab. The total amp rig now weighs just a hair over 26 pounds. Mojo Tone's quality and customer service reputation is stellar, and they were really cool to share the cab for use in the series. With the amp rig in place, I turned to boards and power. Pedal Train shared one of their nano boards and the new version of their Volto battery pack for any all-analog boards we might come up with. I love the idea of a no-cords-needed pedal board, so we'll be playing with that when we can. My friend Rhett Shull had turned me on to the Model Pedal Board Lite with their accompanying tick bags, and Model helped out with one of those as well. So lightweight, and the tick bag has great organization for taking the essentials to the gig. For beefier and isolated power needs, I turned to Bob Weil and Zach Childs at True Tone. They sent up one of their CS6 power supplies. Low profile, it fits under the mini boards easily. 6 isolated outputs, 4 of which are switchable for higher voltage. With over 1600 milliamps on tap, it can run anything digital you might want to throw at it, including something like an HX Stomp. They're a great company, and I was thrilled to partner with them on this. Whew, okay, that's the rig. Now let's get to the pedals and the short story. Jetter Gear is under the direct and daily attention of Brad Jetter. Brad's story is one we'd now recognize in someone that makes their living in music and electronics. His dad was in the service, so after bouncing around the country for most of his youth, they settled in Massachusetts. By the time he was 15, Brad had been bitten by the guitar bug, and like many of us, he realized that he could find a calm place in his teenage world, holed up in his room playing the guitar for hours at a time. He was also the kid that took everything apart to see how it worked. Quote, "You could fill your backyard with the stuff that I took apart and never got back together again." End quote. But that's how you learn. And as they told me when I was learning to ski, if you're not falling down, you're not improving. And improve is just what Brad did, gathering tons of knowledge along the way with what led to fixing and modifying his own gear. Gigging started early, and by the time he was in college, he realized that he probably wasn't going to be a rock star after all. So he took his liberal arts degree and went off to work in corporate America. But it was fixing his own amps and those of the other guys gigging in his area that eventually took him down his first path in the music business, Bedrock Amps. This part of the story likely starts with modding his own Marshalls and from a fascination with the power sections in high-watt amps. He had a JTM 45 that he had modded, and he had enough people tell him that it was the best Marshall they'd ever heard. So, while still at the corporate gig, he started designing. This was 1985, pre-internet, pre-online DIY forums world. He had to teach himself mechanical drawing to have the chassis built. He designed his own circuits, and he built the circuit boards. He also taught himself how to become a cabinet maker. He used the old Marshall cabinets as the design goal. He told me, quote, "If you pull the Tolex off an old Marshall cabinet, it's a thing of beauty." A friend with an electronics background also had a house where this could all happen, so they partnered in a new company. Brad started building cabinets, and his buddy populated boards, and they started shopping the head around to music stores. That started things rolling, and in '86, they were talking to Guild Guitars about cutting a deal with Bedrock for their amps. The deal never worked out, but they got to know the photographer that was shooting artist ads for Guild. A couple of the amps were left at Guild, and when it came time to do a photo shoot for Aerosmith, the photographer took the amps with him. Brad Whitford and Joe Perry plugged into the amps, and they freaked out. Brad Whitford got in touch, and Bedrock ended up building 6 full stacks so they could use the Bedrocks live on tour, supporting their big comeback record, Permanent Vacation. The first time they used the amps was at the Cotton Bowl, and they flew Jeter out for the show. That started things rolling a bit faster. They sold direct. They started building a distribution network in stores. Lots of folks were interested. Neil Schon called. Johnny Winter called. Slash called. They showed the amp to Stevie Ray Vaughan. Lots of business with lots of cool people. But they just weren't making any money. By late 1990, it was getting pretty bad, and Jeter had started selling off his guitars to pay the bills. So in the fall of '91, he called it quits at Bedrock and left it to his partners and made the required life changes. He landed in Atlanta by the mid-90s, and liking to work with his hands, he ended up doing high-end carpentry. It satisfied him as a craftsman, and it paid the bills, but around 2005, he gave in to his buddies that were pushing him to do some pedals on the side. He set up a bench in the basement and designed the Gain Stage Blue. To produce the pedal, he had to learn it all. How to build boxes, how to powder coat, how to silkscreen the graphics. By the fall of 2006, he'd built a rudimentary website, and he needed a demo. He bought a video camera, and in his music room full of vintage Fender and Marshall amps, he shot a short test video. Having played some Eric Johnson-y like stuff, folks bought the Gain Stage Blue, thinking they would sound like EJ. Jeter gear has been Brad's full-time gig ever since. "It's all about quality to me," Brad said. By 2008, he'd gone through 4 or 5 powder coaters before finding someone that could do the work to his satisfaction. He found someone else to fabricate the steel enclosures, folded boxes with welded corners. Same thing with screen printers. Most screen printers are just doing t-shirts. They just don't have the experience with something like an enclosure. He was already doing his own design work, so he decided to do the silk screening himself as well. He went to the big ink company in town that had an office in Atlanta. He looked at the expensive tools and realized he could build the tools for himself. They connect him with a silkscreen maker that makes his frames for him to this day, and he silkscreens all of his pedals himself. He designs his PCB boards. They're produced off-site, but Brad populates each board by hand. Then he assembles every pedal, installs the board, the jacks, the pots, the power jack. Quote, "I do as much of it as I can myself." He designed other pedals, and those also did well, and he started to build a dealer network. This is where I became aware of Jeter gear. I noticed that places that I thought highly of, Pro Guitar Shop, Wildwood Guitars, and Rogue Guitar Shop, for example, were carrying Jeter pedals, and it made me take notice. The next breakthrough was when he was hanging out with Joe Bonamassa at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. It was when JB had just put a couple of dumbbells in his live rig. So Brad sat there listening to Bonamassa soundcheck the dumbbells, and he started thinking, I could build a pedal to sound like that. He couldn't put his hands on a Dumble, but he'd been able to play a number of real Dumbles, so when he found an exceptionally good clone of ODS 124, he started designing using it as his bassline. He put together an A-B setup where he could play the drive channel of the Dumble and then switch to his pedal running into a clean, deluxe reverb. He had players he trusted come over and play it in blind taste tests to refine the design. And eventually, people just couldn't tell the difference. This is early 2014. That's when he sent one out to Wildwood, and Greg Koch played it, loved the pedal, and it all kind of broke open. So let's talk about the pedals you've been listening to on the mini board. Brad is an advocate for placing your lower gain pedals later in your chain, so let's work our way from left to right. Jetter's primarily a drive pedal company, so I asked Brad's opinion on a delay he'd like to hear me use for the demo playing, and we settled on Dunlop's Echoplex. I agree that it can be tailored to taste, and that the tap tempo switch on a small footprint pedal like this is a plus. Next is a low to medium gain Helium. The primary design goal of the Helium was to achieve a natural, organic low gain performance that sounds like a great tube amp, just on the edge of breakup. Brad said, "Making a low gain pedal is easy. Getting rid of the non-musical artifacts around the notes is not. The Helium has a bit more harmonic contrast and a piano-like bass response. It allows the guitar signal to be reproduced with startling transparency. Though it wasn't originally designed to be used that way, it's often used as an always-on sweetener on many pedal boards, in the same way a Nashville guy might use an RC Boost or a Barefoot Honeybee. It just adds goodness and stacks incredibly well with any gain pedal it might be sitting next to." The next lot on the board was a tough one for me to settle on. The first Jetter pedal I ever bought was a GS167, which has now evolved into the Grissom signature pedal. I bought it based on the different sort of Dumble angle, and on Ben Forehand's exceptional demo of the pedal. I'm not saying it made me think I could play those sweet blues chord substitutions that Ben plays, but hey, I'm as hopeful as the next guitar player. More martially in nature than a GS124, it has a distinctly different feel, more aggressive and less syrupy in the mid-range. It still maintains the singing quality and touch sensitivity that makes Dumbles so desirable. The other obvious contender is one of the two flavors of GS124 that Jetter currently builds. Greg Koch says that he used the 124 as his always-on main drive pedal for his entire Vivid Gristle album. Greg's sophisticated, and if I may be so bold, all-out gristle-tudinous glory is something to inspire even we mortal guitar slingers. Am I right, or am I right? You get the idea. Then there's the new custom-voiced CV124, a slightly modified version of the Jetter Gear Classic. Brad tweaked it for a bit more transparency and attack, particularly for live use. It's still a classic 124 at heart. To distinguish this version, it's only available in a unique hand-finished enclosure. And finally, the Jetter Vibe. As Brad points out, the Vibe packs all the swirly, watery goodness of the original into the smallest box possible. A real vibe that will fit on your pedal board. A true 4-stage classic light-driven circuit. Designed for high input impedance, it will not load down your guitar signal. All Jetter pedals are designed to reach their potential through a clean Fender-style amp. But dialing in your pedals, just like dialing in your amp, is unique to you. Brad reminded me that, quote, "There's no standard for where the white dot goes. 12 o'clock isn't always unity. Use your ears. There's no standard for where unity gain is on pedals. With your rig, the way you play, turn the knobs and see how the pedal reacts for you." Brad has always designed his pedals for use at stage volume. Anybody can make a good sounding pedal for bedroom volumes. There are any number of pedals that you don't see people using on any live boards. I design at stage volume. It has to sound good at stage volume, or I'm not interested. Interestingly, Jetter is currently moving away from using a dealer network. He's moving to only selling direct via his website. He's also going to be selling at direct pricing, basically the cost of what he used to sell to dealers for. This way, Brad can still make what he used to make on each pedal, but the consumer is no longer paying the dealer markup. Maybe a bit paradoxically for a gear designer, late in one of our conversations, Brad the guitar player reminded me, in the end, the gear has very little to do with the ultimate sound. Very little. But it's that little bit that we're often chasing, of course, and given that reality, I just as soon chase it playing gear crafted by people I respect and admire for what they do. I imagine if you're still listening to this Jetter Gear short story, you do too. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you want to further support the videos, stop by the store and grab a t-shirt or mug. The link's in the description. Until next time, thanks for being a part of the 5 Watt world.